Hello everyone, are you ready for week 3? Let's go. This week we're going to be looking at writing across several different contexts. So what we're going to look at is comparison, cause and effect, and persuasion. You might know this already if you've dug into the chapter activities or looked at the discussion board. What I'd like to do for our lecture activity is continue to pull that thread about making this applicable in the quote-unquote real world. So how does writing impact communication broadly, and also how do you see it show up in your day-to-day life, because that's really what we want to do, is be able to strengthen or develop those skills. So we'll be looking at comparison, cause and effect, and persuasion. And sometimes you might not necessarily call that out like that's what you're doing, but if you thought about it, if you reflected in your writing or your communication, then you might notice that either you or other people are actually engaging in these skills on a day-to-day activity. Or in day-to-day activities. And then I also just want to make sure I call out that connection between writing and communication in general, because there is a strong connection. So while it might not be explicitly writing or writing in a formal context, all forms of writing and communication are connected. All right. So just kind of framing that by the end of this session, you're going to be able to connect your writing to those real life situations and think about it through the lens of each of those different scenarios, whether you're comparing or contrasting, you're looking at cause and effect, or maybe you're engaged in, or maybe somebody else is engaged in persuasion as it relates to you. All right, so that's our learning goals and our purpose today. There will be an interactive activity, so I do encourage you for all of the lectures to have pen and paper handy. You might not always use paper, but certainly a pen is handy, especially if you don't want to toggle back and forth between computer screens and you just want to listen to the video and jot down some notes. I'll give it a minute. I'm going to actually pause, and I'll give you an opportunity to pause if you would like to. There's a lot of words. This is very vocabulary rich, so I'm going to give you a minute to pause and really read through these carefully so that you can look at not just what our objectives are today, but how we're framing our thinking. So I'll give you a minute to pause and take, I would say, 1 minute to read. Okay, so hopefully you're hitting play. And what I want you to really think about as we move forward is, in your career, you're going to need to communicate clearly and support your ideas with evidence. And so the more you practice writing, whether or not it's one skill or the next, all of that is going to help you be more clear, succinct, and impactful as you move forward in your writing. And again, that's writing, whether it's a paper, maybe you've been asked to conduct some research and then communicate it back out, and maybe what we call a one-pager or a white page, or you might have a little mini research, or maybe more thorough research you're communicating through that avenue, or maybe it's just emails and presentations and PowerPoints and things of that nature. So comparing and contrasting in writing, most of you are like, oh, of course, Dr. Belmar, we know what that is. But I want you to think about where you already use this in your workplace or in your daily life. So think about it when you are maybe comparing a job position or a promotion. You want to compare and contrast the different aspects of a position. It's not just always whatever like the salary is. There's benefits, and there's work conditions, there's quality of life issues, there's hidden things within the salary package, not just the actual salary. That's an example of maybe comparison or contrasting. You may even be helping walk a patient through thinking about one procedure or the next, or one avenue of treatment or next. You may be in a support role as regard to that too. So just kind of think about all the places where this might be applicable. And then I'll give you a minute to pause that and read through. Again, lots of academic language here. You may, instead of writing notes, may want to print this out. There is a lot of research that the more you write, the more you cognitively process an idea. So certainly not a bad idea to write down some notes. And I'll pause and let you do that. Okay, so hopefully you're coming off a pause and you're playing the video again now. And what I am hopeful the outcome kind of for that activity is you're thinking about this vocabulary as it's used to use comparison to make informed decisions. Oops, hit the right button there going. So when we say cause and effects, like what does that look like in our real life? Well, think about healthcare choices like we were just talking about, not just comparison and contrasting, but cause and effect, right? So what's the effect? Is the bang worth the buck? Is what you're going to get out of something worth what you have to put up, or give up? So that's one of those cause and effect situations where writing is really going to help you process and be able to articulate more succinctly, more clearly. Again, this is just like exercise. You can't just magically say, I'm good at it. You really have to do tiny, tiny little small steps, millions of small steps every day to get good at something athletically. And the same is exactly true for writing. You really have to write and get feedback and practice and do it again and again and again to be able to get good at it. And so while it might seem simple and you think, oh, I could walk a patient through cause and effect, yes, but writing is going to help improve those skills. And that's really what you want to be, is to be the best when it comes to that. Same with explaining why things happen, right? So when you explain something, being able to use the right word choice, being able to string words and sentences together, being organized in your thought. Again, the more you strengthen these skills, the more you practice it, the better it's going to be, both in the sense of writing or when it comes to thinking and speaking. So I'll again encourage you to pause this and read through that kind of thick vocabulary. And because there are so many, I don't want to rush you. So do pause this video so you can read through those bullet points. Okay, hopefully you have now played the video again, and we're going to go on to the next, which is persuasive writing. So I want you to think about where persuasive writing might show up in your day-to-day life. Think about where you consume information, where you give information. Think about a future career and how being persuasive might be, and persuasive doesn't have to be negative, okay? Some people might think connotation-wise, like persuasive means bad. It doesn't. It just means you are commanding the room. You're commanding the information. Persuasive doesn't have to be negative. I mean, it could. It's up to you to really be thoughtful and analytical to be able to discern the difference between the positives and the negatives when it comes to persuasive writing. So again, digging into persuasion helps you see when it might be in a more positive or negative-centered avenue. But really, this is all intended to help you become better communicators. So we're thinking about how do you influence decisions. Again, influencing not meaning it's negative, okay? There could be positive instances for influencing decisions. So I want you to think about that. Again, just like the other slides that were similar to this. Hate to sound repetitive, but it's the best way for you to really read through and process this information. I want you to pause and read and take any notes you think are beneficial, and or print these out. Again, I think writing notes is certainly a cognitive strategy that will help you. So before we move on, I do want to bring your attention to advocacy and relationships. I think that probably will live a lot in all of the different pathways that you probably are considering, just looking at your program and what you may be doing in the future. I'd like you to just take a moment before we move on and really think about what advocacy means and how you can build credibility and trust in relationships. And communication is a big part of that. So we're talking about trust, credibility, relationships, and what that might look like in an advocacy role. And what I really hope to inspire you to do is just think more, maybe do a little search on advocacy in your field to think about what that might look like. So this is really meant to get you to think more about what you would like to maybe pull that thread on and do some further snooping around. All right, so What are some of the overlap and shared skills in writing? So these are not isolated. So we presented these right as like different skill areas: comparison, cause and effect, persuasion, but they're really connected. They're not isolated writing skills, and that's why in your papers that you write, in your discussion boards, you'll see a lot of overlap. And obviously that's really just because we want to have the connectivity. We want you to see that they're interconnected, because these are where you're going to be able to really transfer these skills seamlessly. That's why you don't really maybe say, oh, I see I'm doing a persuasion piece today at work. That's not how that works. Usually the overlap is so embedded, the interconnectivity is so hard to find unless we really thoughtfully and intentionally stop to look for it, that things bleed into one another. So you may really be using and touching a lot of these different skills without even thinking about it. And that's okay. That's really what it's meant to be. The pausing and dissecting and looking at these from different perspectives is really just meant to help you bring some intentionality and purpose and be thoughtful about it. So we're kind of like deconstructing these skills to be able to put them back together in the real world, and then along the way strengthen those skills. So I do want you to participate in this interactive discussion. So first thing I want you to do is think about a real life situation. And I'm going to go ahead and read all 4 steps for you so you can kind of see where you're going, because it might change how you do this. So I want you to think of a real life situation, and then I want you to think of a type of writing that would meet that situation. So you need to do something, you're involved in XYZ, and what type of writing would match that scenario? And then I want you to find some paper if you didn't already get it at the beginning of this video. Again, when you're doing your lectures, because they're interactive, it's always good to have pen and paper. Scratch paper will be fine. I'm not going to be collecting this. Write on a piece of cardboard. I think I mentioned that in lecture 1. I had to do that the other day. So you're going to have something to write on. And then you're going to think about 2 sentences that explains why that type of writing would meet that scenario or situation. So you're really going to be designing a scenario. What type of writing would match the scenario? And then you're going to give 2 sentences why that type of writing would meet that type of situation. So think about it like you're the teacher and you're writing a quiz question and you're writing the answer. So the question would be, what's the real life situation? Or maybe, here's a real life situation, what type of writing matches this? And then the answer is the 2 sentences explaining why. So I'd like for you to pause and do that. And again, you're thinking of a real life situation, you create the scenario, you come up with the type of writing that matches that scenario, and then you're going to write 2 sentences explaining why that's the answer. So I want you to pause this and complete that activity, and then when you're ready, come back and hit play. Okay, hopefully you are pausing, and if you're coming back, I want you to think about, as we close out, that writing is not just about completing assignments, it's really about your thinking skills, it's your analyzing and communicating skills. Are you doing that clearly? Can you get better? All of us can get better at communication, whether it's written or verbal, and again, they're very connected. And so there's an iterative process, which means that you write and get feedback and you write some more. I would really hope that you embrace that and just allow yourself to participate in that process of writing. And maybe it's not the best in the world, and that's okay, because the only way you can get better is to do it. And so don't let the fear of not being a great writer stop you. And here are some closing thoughts in our same format as we used earlier as you pause and apply your thinking. Alrighty guys, well, I will leave it to you to complete your activity. Thank you.